Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kim Chua, for your introduction. Thank you very much also Dingley to invite me in the first place. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it tonight, but he was the one to initiate this presentation, and well, I'm very pleased to see so many people in the room. I was not expecting such an attendance, so I hope that my presentation will match your expectations. So, as Kim Chua explained, I've picked up 25 birds that I think are great and that can be found in Asia, in the Oriental region of the world. Of course, it's a cross section. There is no such thing as the 25 greatest birds. It's all very subjective. It's a cross section, throughout the different countries, different parts. I mean, the Oriental region is big. Goes from basically Pakistan and Siberia all the way down to Indonesia and Japan. So it's a huge area. And it's also a cross section through different families of birds. They are presented actually in some kind of a taxonomic order whereby ducks come first. For the first bird regarding the talk first maybe, I'll present the bird one after one. The idea is that you can throw questions kind of, after each bird. That can be regarding where I took the picture, how do I go there, is it easy to find the bird. I will also touch upon a few things regarding conservation. Not all of these birds, but most of those birds have conservation issues. They are threatened, some of them endangered. I can briefly talk about that, not that I'm an expert on each and every bird, but I know a little bit about the situation for all those birds. So that's also part of the discussion we can have. So don't hesitate to throw questions after I just finish my little bird presentation, rather than having questions only in the end, covering all the birds that I've presented. I think we have, an hour and something, yeah. So there are only 25 birds, so we have time to discuss after each and every
Don't forget your picture catch.
Right. Trying to control that. Anyway, this is, as you've probably recognized, is the bear spot chart. There are only a few ducks which can only be found in Asia. Bear spot chart, I think I'm thinking about scaly-sided merganser, Philippine duck, Baikal teal, maybe a few whistling ducks. So not a lot of them actually. Most of the ducks you can find in Asia are kind of cosmopolitan birds, but this one is only found in Asia, and that's a bird which has a big conservation problem. It's been listed now as critically endangered. It's a bird which population decreased dramatically from the late 80s into the 90s and the year 2000. Distribution is it breeds mostly in Northeast China, basically around the area called Manchuria, and the main problem has been probably habitat destruction. It's an area which used to have a lot of wetlands where the birds were breeding, and during those last 30 years there has been a lot of transformation, shift to agriculture, basically. Wetlands being dried up. So about 10 years ago, people started scratching their heads and, have you seen a bear spot chart recently? No, and you? No. And people just realized that the population had crashed very, very dramatically. Recently, there has been a lot of surveys, a lot of studies being made about this bird, both on the breeding side. They found new breeding sites in China, which is a bit of a hope, but then they also figured that all those breeding sites were not very protected and were subject to a number of threats. They've also gone surveying potential wintering areas, especially in Myanmar recently, where they found, some other birds. But all in all, we're talking about a population which is probably not more than 1,000 birds, so that's fairly low. And the second thing about this bird, which is a potential threat, and there's a link with this picture, is that there is possibly also hybridization taking place with sturgeon spot chart, which is a very, very similar bird in terms of DNA, in terms of genetics. Actually, this particular bird, which has been photographed in central Tokyo about 2 years ago. When I mean central Tokyo, I mean the framing is nice, It's actually in a garden in the center of the city, and in the background you have the Tokyo Dome, which is the big stadium where the Tokyo Giants baseball team are playing. So it's really, really central Tokyo, and this bird turned up 2 years ago on this pond. They spent a couple of weeks, and actually the same bird turned up again this year on another pond in the Tokyo area. And this bird has been debated as a possible hybrid because it has a little bit of a yellow eye, it has a little bit of vermiculations on the flanks. So all this to say that, yeah, the population of Bear's pochard is pretty slim, and there are not so many places where you can see the bird nowadays. China, of course, is probably the best bet, but then they are difficult to see when they are breeding. They are very, very shy, and you have to be lucky to find one wintering bird nowadays. Actually, Japan, there is this bird in Tokyo. There is a bird in Osaka, which has turned up every winter since 4 years ago in the Osaka region. And if you want to see this bird in Asia, probably wait for the news to come in. And if the bird is in Osaka, take the next plane, see it, because unfortunately it might not be around 10 years from now. Any question regarding Bear's pochard in particular? I don't think it ever made it to Singapore, right? Did it? Right.
How big is it? What's the size?
It's a pochard. It's the size of a common pochard, basically. So 40 to 50 centimeters, something like that. So it's a medium-sized duck, basically.
Yeah, it used to show up in northern lake in northern Thailand, right?
True.
Sometimes, yeah.
Absolutely. Last winter, a few turned up. It's in Bumbuarfet, I think. I don't know how many exactly. But yeah, I mean, back in the 80s, 90s, there were hundreds of them. It was the main wintering ground, and basically numbers have completely crashed. So no, it's a rare bird. It's when one turns up, a lot of people go to see it. So yeah, probably northern Thailand is probably a shorter destination from Singapore rather than Osaka. Right, let's move to the next bird. So this is not a chicken. This is not a chicken. This is a maleo. It belongs to this family of birds called megapods. About 20 different species. Mostly found in Australasia, but some of them are actually found across into the Oriental region. I think actually there is one species which can be found technically in Malaysia, in some small islands off the coast of Sabah, right? The Philippine megapode, which is a close relative to this one. But this one is arguably the most spectacular, the most charismatic bird. It's found on Sulawesi. It is a sort of national bird of North Sulawesi. Megapods have a very particular biology. You're probably familiar with that, but just to briefly introduce this, they are communal breeders.
Don't restart.
I don't.
Carry.
I just leave it alone. They basically lay their eggs in mounds of volcanic soil.
Just leave it alone.
Yeah, just leave it alone. Where it's hot enough for the birds to actually incubate. So the female doesn't sit on the eggs like other birds. They just dig a hole, lay their eggs, put back the sand on top, and just leave. And when I mean leave, they actually really leave, which means that a few weeks later, and that's something, when I took this picture, I was in a hide and I spent the whole morning in that spot, and I was dreaming that I could see a maleo chick come out of this burrow and make its way into the forest. Because what happens is that once the egg is laid, the parents just don't care about their chick anymore. It's over, right? Which means that the chick, when it comes out, it's completely able to fend for itself. It will find its food. Within a few hours, when the wings are dry, it will be able to fly. So the eggs of the maleo are actually very big. They are about 5 times bigger than the eggs of a normal chicken, which leads to the conservation problem, which is that local people like those eggs very much because it's a lot of food, and traditionally they've been collecting those eggs. Practice which has been sustainable, in old times when people were, organizing and, they were taking half of the eggs, leaving half of the other eggs. But then, of course, population grew and everybody wanted its own egg. So a lot of the breeding sites have actually disappeared. So there are a few areas where the breeding sites are very well protected. Actually, this is a fenced area. You just can't get in without an authorization. But in most of the places across Sulawesi, the bird has actually disappeared. So I think it's an endangered bird. I'm just checking. Sorry, it's an endangered bird. All right, so it's not critically. It's just a stage before that, which means that the conservation status is very, very serious. This picture has been shot in a place called Tambun, which is sort of between North Sulawesi and Gorontalo, maybe 6 hours drive from Manado or something like that, which is probably the best place in Sulawesi to see this bird, even though you, Kichwa, went to another place, right, to see it, which is somewhere on the south coast, on the east coast. Right? So this is a great bird to see, really. And it's really, really interesting to see a pair of maleos come down from the forest early morning, find a suitable place, dig, the female digs, lays the egg, and they just leave. And again, I would love to see one day a maleo chick come out of the mound and just run into the forest, being able to fend for itself.
I was told it can come out only in the night. I
Yeah.
was told by the researchers, I don't know. I mean, which makes sense, right? I mean, there's less predation.
That's right. That's right. Any question regarding maleo, where to see it or conservation? All right, just move to the next. But this is a chicken. This is a special chicken. It's a tragopan. There are 5 species of tragopan, all of them in Asia. And this is arguably the rarest, so I was saying the most beautiful of the 5 species. This is Western tragopan, a bird which has a very limited distribution range. So it's found basically in northern India and a little bit into Pakistan. I don't think it's found in Nepal at all, or it might have been found in the past, but it's disappeared from there. So compared to the other species of tragopan, like Temminck's or Blythe or Satyr, the distribution range is much reduced. Then to see this bird, you need to rough up your birding a little bit. It is actually 2 days trekking to go into the place where I've been, starting from 1,000 meters high, and the camp was 3,000 meters high. It was a beautiful experience. One of the greatest treks I've ever done. There are lots of other great birds to see in this area. It's located in the Great Himalayan National Park, so it's about 500 kilometers north of New Delhi, something like that. So the start of the trek is pretty accessible, but then you need to walk your way up the mountain, and then of course you need to see the bird, find the bird and see the bird. We were up there 4 days, and we only get zuzus on the 3rd day, so it was starting to be a little bit tense. Tragopans are shy birds, they are shy pheasants. Unfortunately, they are actually hunted and trapped by local people in the area, so they mind people being around, so you really need to organize yourself and hide and be very, very precautious if you want to see this bird. Actually, this same bird, not this picture, but this same bird was on the front page of a Birding Asia issue, I think last year or something like that. Because my very good friend Jamie Koryakose from India was just 1 meter next to me, taking basically the same pictures when the bird came out. Any question regarding Western trag? It's a vulnerable bird, by the way, so it's not endangered, but probably will be in the near future, because again there are evidence that the bird is being hunted.
Yeah.
Right, something completely different. Albatross are basically usually associated with southern oceans, with the roaring 40s and the screaming 50s. And it's not widely known, I mean, people who are not into birding don't really realize that actually 3 species of albatross can be found in the North Pacific. And very, very conveniently, all 3 species can be seen quite close from Tokyo. And it takes like a 24 hours ferry trip, return ferry trip, in winter, so somewhere between November and April, to actually have a very good chance to see all 3 species. So this particular species is a short-tailed albatross, which is the rarest and the biggest of the 3. The 2 others are black-footed and lazen. They breed in the thousands and probably close to the million, especially in the Midway Atoll area west of Hawaii, where you have huge colonies. This bird was just really 1 hair away from total extinction, because it was harvested heavily from the late 19th century right until World War II. It was probably having a range pretty impressive, I mean, well beyond just Japan. It was probably also found in the South China Sea, but it was completely wiped out. It was harvested for feathers, making pillows with the feathers of these birds. Actually, the name of this bird in Japanese is Hahodori, which literally means stupid bird. Why is that? Because when they are sitting on their eggs, they just don't move. So people could just come and hit them, kill them, and take the bird and take the feathers. So by basically the start of the Second World War, no birds were seen anymore in the colony. The colony had been fully harvested. And when the Second World War finished and Americans started to come in, one American biologist declared it extinct. Thought the bird was gone. And a couple of years later, a few birds started turning up again at the same place. This is an island which is about 500 kilometers south of Tokyo called Torishima. And birds started to come back. Why is that? Because albatrosses actually take a long time to mature. It takes about 10 years. And during their sort of immature periods, they sort of travel the seas, and only when they are fully adult, they would come back to the colony and stop trying to find a mate and breed. So most probably those were immature birds that had gone. There were also possibly other locations, small islets, where the birds was breeding and that were not known. Anyway, we started, just in the 50s with a population of a few breeding birds. Conservation was taken seriously then, and the bird has recovered very, very well. So now you have a little bit over 2,000 breeding birds. About 75% of them are in this Torishima area, about 500 kilometers south of Tokyo. And a quarter of them are in the Senkaku Islands, which is these famous islands which are disputed between Japan and China, north of Taiwan. So the conservation status has actually gone the other way. Used to be critically endangered, and endangered is it's listed as vulnerable, as people think that good conservation measures are actually taken. One of the main risks was actually that Torishima is a volcanic island. It's a volcano that could have blown up anytime. And the fact that there is no significant colony on the Senkaku Islands is actually a very good factor. Actually, recently you started to have birds breeding or attempting breeding in the Midway Atoll as well, so much further east in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So the situation for this bird, unlike pretty much all the other ones, has actually improved. So if you like birds, I consider that the experience of actually seeing an albatross fly over the sea, especially in rough weather and in winds like that, is one of the most beautiful birding experiences you can have, sitting next to seeing a penguin or seeing a bird of paradise display. So if you happen to go to Tokyo for shopping, you just put aside 24 hours to escape. Take the ferry to Hachijojima, You have 30 minutes there to find the Yuzu thrush. You go back onto the ferry, and then all the ride back, and you have very, very good chances to see those albatross flying above the ocean. Any question regarding short-tailed albatross? Right, so moving down the taxonomy tree. It's not very focused actually, or is it my eyes, or I think we can do better. I think I did better. I took the picture. Anyway, yeah, usually when you take a picture of a good bird, you only have one at a time. So there was an occasion where I had two at a time. So on the left side, you've got an ibis bill, which is a very, very atypical wader, unique in its genus, which breeds in the Himalayas and often wintering basically around the south of the Himalayas, also in China. And to the right is a white-bellied heron, which is another critically endangered bird. A beautiful heron, a very large heron. It's about the size of a large-billed heron, I believe. It's about 1 meter and 40 centimeters, so really a huge heron. Which habitat is forested rivers south of the Himalayas, most of which unfortunately have been badly disturbed by human activities, and more recently the most threatening activity is actually the building of dams for hydropower and for electricity. Bhutan is where this picture has been taken. Bhutan only exportation, I mean, besides getting money from tourists, is actually hydropower, which they export to India. Basically, India is giving them all they need in terms of food, vegetable, hardware, and the only thing they receive from Bhutan is electricity. So it's very important for the Bhutan economy to develop more dams, which of course spells trouble for this bird. This picture was taken just north of Punakha, which is a small city. I mean, every city in Bhutan is small, by the way, but and it's possibly the most reliable site in the world to see this bird until now. Another option would be to go to far northeastern India into a national park called Namdapa, just very near the Myanmar border, where it's also being regularly seen. But that's certainly a very, very rare bird, and that's certainly a bird which has a pretty bleak future, given all those considerations on conservation.
60.
Sorry?
60 something.
60 something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably low, yeah, 100 maybe at max. So we're talking about very few birds remaining. Well, this is also a combo shot, except that the second bird is not that rare. It's a white-throated kingfisher, which photobombed my giant ibis. So giant ibis is another, beautiful bird, extremely charismatic. It's a bird that was also thought extinct for quite a long period of time. I think it was last seen in the 50s or early 60s, and then all this region of Indochina went into a very, very troubled period where it was not about bird watching anymore. And it was only refound, I think, about more than 10 years ago in northern Cambodia. So that's where the picture was taken. There is probably a very small remnant population in southern Laos as well. But we're not talking about a lot of birds, probably no more than a few hundreds, living in habitats which are also shrinking as development happens, as forests are being cleared, as agricultural practices change. I mean, the same things come, again and again. There is an area which is specifically protected for this bird in Cambodia called Smat Boe. And that's where I saw this bird. How long it will last, I don't know. It's a huge bird. It's by far the largest ibis on Earth. It's over a meter high, so it's much bigger. It's about twice the size of a glossy ibis. So it's a very big bird. It's a super shy bird, so it took me quite some time to get this picture. I actually spent 2 full mornings in a hide until finally one bird sort of perched at shooting distance, and I could get a few pictures. I know people have done better since, but I'm quite happy I finally got to see this bird at a reasonable distance. Any question regarding giant ibis? It's critically endangered, of course. Right, I had to pick one raptor. I picked this one. It's a Philippine eagle. Another very troubled species. Used to be found out throughout the Philippines. No, it's disappeared from much of its original range. The southern island of Mindanao is probably its stronghold. This picture was taken on the slopes of Mount Apo, which is a mighty volcano just near Davao, which is the capital city of Mindanao. It was a nesting situation. So basically, there is a conservancy organization taking care of Philippine eagle, and those people know where the nest are. And for the first time, they allowed actually photographers or bird watchers to come and see the eagle at nest. So they set up a hide where people were able to be, and of course took this occasion. It was 3 years ago to go and see this. On the right side of the picture is a chick. Actually, you can see the feathers, the wing feathers are not fully grown, and to the left side is an adult. There's actually a sad story coming with it, which was so there was this pair having this nest, and a few months after this picture was taken, one of the adults, I'm not sure if it's a male or a female, if someone remembers, was actually shot. Among I think it was a female, yeah, Abdel agrees. And that's another problem, of course, is that the Philippines and Mindanao have a pretty bad gun culture, as you probably know. Some people purposely or just by ignorance see a raptor flying and they shoot it. So yeah, the situation for this bird is again not very brilliant, but a lot of money is put into conservation for it. So it is actually the national bird for the Philippines. It's an emblem, so I hope they'll make things so that we can still see this absolutely beautiful bird flying in the future. It's actually massive. It's huge. It's a huge bird. It compares to harpy eagle and Steller's eagle in terms of size. It's well over 2 meters wingspan. It's really big. I had the chance to see it flying. It's also quite a sight. Philippine eagle, anyone? I forgot to say, it's critically endangered. This is a masked finfoot. It's a bird that you probably know. I'm aware that one bird turned up. How long ago was that? 3-4 years ago? More than that. Okay. On a reservoir in Singapore. Yeah. And stayed for a few days or a few weeks or something like that.
Days.
Okay, right. But still, a lot of people I think were able to.
It was a quite friendly bird, but that's not the first record. We had one at Singapore, and I think the reservoir as well. So, but of course, it's I think just a handful of sightings.
So it's a bird that has a habitat linked with mangroves and rivers with very forested banks. Habitat which again has been disappearing fast. It used to have a huge distribution range from basically eastern India, Bangladesh, all the way to Sumatra through Indochina or the Thai Malay Peninsula. It's gone from most of the range. No, unfortunately, I don't think it's been seen in the recent past in Sumatra. In Malaysia, sometimes, probably still a few birds in Taman Negara. I'm not sure How recent was the last sighting? In Thailand, there used to be a bird in Krabi, then it disappeared. Actually, a small population has been found in Cambodia, which was good news. But probably the stronghold for this bird is the Sunderbans, and especially the Sunderbans of Bangladesh, which is the eastern part of the Sunderbans. You probably know the Sunderbans is this huge estuary area where the Brahmaputra goes into the and the Ganges goes into the sea. It's a very, I mean, it's a huge area of wilderness, but it's also inhabited by a lot of people. As you probably know, India and Bangladesh are pretty populated areas. A lot of fishermen go into the Sunderbans to look for fish, to look for crab. They go into those small, shallow channel that crisscross the Sunderbans, and unfortunately, when they see a nest of this, they take the eggs. So conservation status again on this one is listed as endangered. Very good people in Bangladesh are actually taking some action to try to alert the opinion about the plight of this bird, to try to educate the locals, the fishermen, to tell them to just leave it alone, try to designate areas where they found most of the nests as being protected. But of course, enforcement is very, very difficult, control is very, very difficult. So it's another bird which is on the edge. It's part of a family of birds, the finfoots, which has 3 representatives, one of them being in our Oriental region, the mask finfoot. And there is 1 species in America and South America and 1 species in Africa. They're pretty strange birds related to grebes, somehow, maybe a little bit to rails as well, but they're very, very peculiar birds. Any question regarding the finfoot? Well, there has to be a crane, so I picked this one, Siberian crane. It's a recent picture, it was taken this winter. It was taken in Maipo in Hong Kong. It was a bird of the winter in Maipo, a bird of the winter in Hong Kong. Actually, up to 3 birds were seen early in the winter, and only bird, an adult bird, stayed all winter. Maipo is a great place to see birds. You have actually highs being set up where people can sit and take pictures, so it was a very comfortable bird to shoot. You just had to wait. And at the beginning, at least, it was coming pretty close from the height, so you had really opportunities to take, quite close shots from this beautiful crane. A bird which also is troubled in terms of conservation. I'm trying to read it. It's a critically endangered bird. Even so, the population is not that bad. We're talking about 2,000-3,000 birds, but it's very concentrated. There used to be a western population which was wintering in Bharatpur in India, but it's been almost completely wiped out. I think there are 3 or 4 birds remaining there. So it's all concentrated in the east. The breeding grounds are not a problem. It's in far north Yakutia, in areas which are not yet too troubled in terms of conservation, but all of those birds winter on Lake Poyang, on the Yangtze Basin. And as you probably know, there has been a huge dam being built, and all the water levels are actually diminishing every year, year after year. And there was actually a crisis this winter, a drought, where basically Poyang Lake was reduced to half of its normal size, and actually quite a few vagrant Siberian cranes were found. There was this bird in Hong Kong, there were a few birds in Shanghai, there were a few birds in Japan. Whether it's connected with the situation on Poyang Lake, we don't really know, but of course, if the situation deteriorates, then the birds will need to find another wintering site, and there are not a lot of options in China, as you probably know. So it's definitely a situation to watch with respect to Siberian crane. Any question?
Yeah, I missed the name of the bird. What is it?
Siberian crane.
Oh, Siberian.
Sorry, Siberian. Yeah.
Siberian.
Yes.
There was a juvenile in Taiwan
Yeah, sure.
for quite a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. He stayed, I think he first arrived 2 years ago, something like that. Then it stayed on. It actually became a NATO in the process. And it was it was a very popular thing. I think a lot of people went to see it. It was adopted by the local population. It was making the newspaper pages. At one point, it actually got lost. I think it tried to fly and sort of landed near a station, and the policeman actually took care of it and brought it back into the rice. I think it's gone now, right? It sort of flew off, and hopefully flew off the right direction. Siberian Tree. Now that's another very, very charismatic bird. Probably the most charismatic wader or shorebird that you can find anywhere in the world.
In Singapore.
Yes, it's in Asia. It might still, turn up in Singapore one day. When was the last one?
2000.
1999.
1999, all right. So
Chinese.
not yet in the 21st century, right? So I mean, it's probably the among all the birds that have a conservation problem, it's probably the one on which the most money is actually being invested nowadays. It's a sponsored Sandpiper. There's a huge project involving different countries. They're trying to actually artificially breed birds in a location in UK. They're trying to actually take eggs from the nest, put them into a sort of special location for the eggs to hatch, hoping that the adults will lay another clutch so that the numbers will multiply. So they're doing tremendous efforts to try to boost the growth of the population. It's a bird that used to be reasonably common. The numbers are now estimated to be in a few hundreds, no more. So for a wader, it's a very, very low number. A lot of reason for the disappearance. Again, nothing to see with the breeding grounds. We saw it in really, really far northeast Siberia, in places which are pretty safe for now, but it was on the wintering ground. Wintering ground coming from South China all the way to actually Bangladesh. But probably the biggest area for wintering used to be Myanmar and Bangladesh. And in Myanmar there was a big problem with actually poaching, mist netting. Fishermen just putting mist nets and catching waders as a bycatch, basically as a food supplement. People are very, very poor in this area. So conservation organizations have actually worked very hard to basically go and see those fishermen, those local population, and try to stop them from doing that. So whether the population will rebound or not remains to be seen. There are all the threats. All those birds, of course, are migratory birds. They need migratory stages, places where they can rest on the way. Most of them are actually on the Sea of China, the eastern China coast, in Korea as well. And mudflats are disappearing fast, reclamation project, and all sorts of things. There was a very famous one in Korea, where basically a huge area of mudflats have been reclaimed. But in China it's taking place as well. Near Shanghai there is an area called Rudong, which is a very important staging ground where as well mudflats are being reclaimed to make room for development, setting up chemical plants or whatever industrial thing is happening there. So yeah, a lot of money is being invested. It's a great bird, it's a fantastic bird. This picture has been taken actually in Bangladesh on a place called Sonalia Island, which is a great place to go and a great place to see the bird. If you go to try to see it, for example, in China, in the eastern coast of China, you will see it's actually a struggle to find the bird because you have a few of them among thousands of stints, mostly redneck stints. And when you look at the distance, the bill is actually not so obvious. When you go to that place in Sonalia, you've got probably 20 of those in the same area, a small area of mudflats, among maybe 100 stints. And then, of course, finding the bird is much, much easier. You've got the place for yourself. You just have to lay down into the mud and wait for a bird to come close, which hopefully here, and it's absolutely a fantastic bird to see from a close distance. Probably from Singapore, your best bet would be to go to Thailand, in the inner Gulf of Thailand, where since a few years you have 3-4 birds wintering every year. And I mean, take some effort, but with a little bit of time you'll be able to see one. Bring the scope, they are not too close, but it's a fantastic bird to see really.
Sorry, did you say the name of the bird?
Sorry, spoonbill sandpiper. Spoon, like a spoon.
Everyone.
And maybe I didn't mention, it's a critically endangered bird. There has to be a girl, and it's a relict girl. A relict girl, which is a bird which was for a long time a mystery species. It was actually only recognized to be a 4 species less than 50 years ago. And at that time, pretty much nothing was known about these birds. It was seen from time to time in different places. They didn't know where they were breeding. They figured out they might be wintering somewhere on the coast of East China, but they didn't really know how the wintering birds were looking like, so pretty much nothing was known. It was finally found that the birds breed exclusively in Western Mongolia on salt lakes. So they have a very specific breeding habitat requirement, and they migrate eastward and spend most of the winter actually on the Bohai Gulf or a little bit further south down the coast. So basically east of Beijing, if you look at the map. This picture was taken in Mongolia, in Western Mongolia, actually this year. And of course, nothing is better than seeing a bird in its breeding habitat. But if you happen to go to China, if you go to the Bohai Gulf, again about 200 kilometers east of Beijing, near Tianjin, if you go there at the end of the winter, beginning of spring, pretty much all the world population, meaning about 10,000 birds, gather there in one place in a very, very spectacular fashion. So it's a beautiful girl, really very, very distinctive. And if you don't want to travel all the way to Mongolia, because it's actually pretty hard to find this bird in Mongolia, as Abdel knows, your best bet is probably to go to eastern China at the end of the winter. And the birds are already in breeding plumage, so with the beautiful blackwood. That's right. It's a bird which is listed, I think, as vulnerable. I'm just checking right now, because the population is not huge. I mean, 10,000 birds is not bad, but it's not huge. And this habitat of salt lakes is being threatened by human activities, as always, and also by mining projects. There's a lot of mining taking place in Mongolia. And to mine for gold and to mine for copper, you need a lot of water. So water is pumped from the lakes, and the water level is diminishing, basically rendering those lakes improper for breeding. And that's a major threat right now. Shouldn't be that. We skipped the bird. We skipped the bird. Skipped a few birds actually. All right. Well, I think I would just continue. We'll see if we catch up with the birds, so that don't mind the taxonomic order is completely screwed up. But anyway, this is trogon. This is a white-headed trogon, a bird which is found in Malaysia, more particularly in Borneo. White-headed trogon, sorry. You're probably familiar with trogons. Is there any trogon in Singapore? No. You have to go across, right? Used to, right? You have to